You're listening to the Gascony Show here on Sunday evening, broadcasting on Radio Koto. Check us out. We do have a new website. It's www.gasconyshow.com. Now, I have great pleasure in telling you that with me in the studio tonight are two very special people. We have singer, songwriter, composer, arranger, and buddy to the stars. She is the multi-talented Joy Askew. And with her is her musician... Oh, did I say that well? Musician? I'm starting my speech already. Musician, producer, Roger Askew. Now, before we get chatting with Joy and Roger, I'd like to play one of Joy's songs so that we can all hear some of her work before we get chatting. Here we go with Drunk on You.
To the bridge. Oh, what do I do to get out of this? Is it a dream? 'Cause it feels like it. Yeah. And there's not even a goodbye kiss. In another
incredible Joy Askew. And Patrick Martinez, our studio manager, hadn't heard Joy play before, and he's definitely a converted fan, I think. This point is going to be one of your best fans from now on, I think, Joy. Welcome to you, and welcome to Roger.
Hello.
You have to speak a little closer to the mic.
Hello.
Hello. Tell me about your beginnings, Joy. You grew up in Newcastle upon Tyne. How was all that? How was your childhood in Newcastle?
Well, actually, we weren't from Newcastle at the beginning, and we were talking about this morning because we were from closer to the mic. Okay, sorry. We were from just outside the London area, and we moved up there when I was 5 years old. And because of the extreme Geordie language up there, I think it was 7. I was 7 years old before I could talk to anybody or understand what was going on. But Newcastle was extremely vibrant. I mean, apart from being horribly cold and wet and ghastly weather, which, you know, people have been talking about since the Romans invaded, I think. But it was extremely vibrant place. I mean, quite a cultural place, juxtaposed with a kind of gangster vibe, if you've ever seen Get Carter, the movie with Michael Caine. So a very interesting place to grow up, because you had, you know, I think Sting grew up at the same time as us. There was amazing art college there with a lot of people there putting out incredible new artists. There was a theatre called the University Theatre that had a lot of cutting-edge directors come up. So a lot of culture was going on, a lot of old culture, but at the same time, it was also a very hard place with a lot of old gangsterism.
Is that right? Yeah.
Strange stuff. So interesting place to grow up.
Yeah. And you know, I worked up there on a project a good while ago, and everybody kept saying "me doc" to me. Did they say that all the time in Newcastle?
Me doc. Me what?
Yeah. Hello, me doc.
Not that I'm aware of. They used to call you Pet.
Pet.
We are Pet.
Hello, Pet.
We are Pet, you canny lass.
Oh, we don't.
You
Yeah,
know, kind of Geordie.
Give me a little bit of that accent.
Duck, I haven't heard, but but Pet definitely, or man, a lot of man. And
so you spent many years there, did you?
I was there. I went down to London as a teenager to join. Well, first of all, to join the pop star Paul Jones, if you remember him from Man for Man. When he branched out on his own, I was in his band briefly, which was a very extremely interesting band. And then I went down again to join the all-female band Bitch, of which I became the lead singer. And once that little jaunt was over, I went back up to Newcastle because they had just begun a jazz and commercial music college up there, and I went there and did saxophone as my major instrument.
Is that right? I don't think I've ever heard you on the saxophone.
I know, nobody has, because I kind of gave it up afterwards.
Okay. It's a great instrument though, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, I got an understanding of big bands. We did a lot of big band stuff and jazz band, and I would write and arrange for that back then. And interestingly enough, that followed me all the way to many, many years later when I moved to New York. I got the chance to do some brass arrangements for some of the best players in the world just by chance. So it was kind of amazing that I had studied that, you know, back then.
So music was part of your life from very early on.
Very early age. I think Roger and I formed our first band when I was 2 and he was 5.
Is that right?
We had the measles. We were confined to the bedroom, bored as hell, right? And Mum and Dad had heard of this song called You Got Me Singing the Blues by Tommy Steele. And they came in one night, and I think they were a bit drunk or something, and they'd been to a party, and they came in singing, You Got Me Singing the Blues, and this really intrigued us because blues to us was a colour. And so we then wrote lots of songs that went, You got me singing the reds, you got me singing the greens, right? That was our first band, and it was just every colour we could think of was our songs.
Any instruments?
No instruments. We were in bed with the measles. It was just that, really.
So it all took off from there then.
Well, we had a piano. Dad was a great piano player.
Oh, I see.
So,
music was in the family then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Roger got a guitar. And it was, and very early on we got hooked into the blues because there was a huge blues boom in Britain. Huge. And we kind of liked that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think by the time we were young teenagers, we had our own blues band.
So you guys played a lot together then when starting out, and I take it.
In those days we did, yeah.
Totally,
It was,
yeah.
Yeah. But
Joy had the voice. She always had this voice. And
And I played the piano
as
as
soon
well.
as she opened her mouth, it was like, wow, we've got a song.
that's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
She was born to sing, so to speak. How would you say, like a bird? Can you describe for us your music style, Joy? And would you say it has been sort of inspirational or?
I think my inspirations have been so many that it's led me to have a little bit of a jumble of a musical style, and I'm not entirely one way. And for instance, I spent 6 years only listening to jazz,
Is that right?
and I missed the punk movement entirely.
It just
It
passed
came
you
and
right
it
on
went,
by.
and people say to me, so and so, and they'll mention something, and I haven't a clue what they're talking about because I was totally into jazz for 6 years.
Yeah.
So and then I think the minute I left that, I met somebody who introduced me to Sly Stone and Quincy Jones and the Fania All Stars and all of this kind of music, and I've had so many different influences. Obviously starting with the Beatles and the Stones and moving forward, and now I'm still inspired by a lot of the new stuff, so it doesn't stop. So I mean, basically, what I decided though after a while was that I'm writing songs.
Right.
So that's what I describe to people.
You're a songwriter.
I'm a songwriter.
First
yeah.
and foremost.
Yeah.
Now, would you say your styles have differed over the years? I mean, has Roger gone a separate direction, or
We sound very different.
Is that right?
I think.
Yeah.
Tell them.
Yeah, I think it is really different, actually. And I think it's probably partly because Joy moved to America.
I see.
She
Yeah.
moved to America years and years ago.
30 years ago.
I can't remember when you last lived in
Yeah.
England, and I didn't move to America, and also I got involved with other things. I was playing with other people more than trying to form my own voice for years and years and years, and I was just a sideman playing with people or helping people make their records or producing them.
Okay, so you would consider yourself to be of varied styles as well, then?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so, but different from Joy.
Excellent. So, Joy, you have composed, recorded, and toured with some really big stars of music, haven't you? You've worked with Peter Gabriel and Laurie Anderson, to name but a few. Can you tell us about some of the highlights, of working with these people and the career that you've had?
Well, a lot of that stuff came earlier on. I was lucky enough to get a tour that took me over to America, which after a while was what I really wanted. And
Who was that with?
that was with a band called Eye to Eye, who are not well known. They were a new band on Warner Brothers, and they were connected to Steely Dan, who you might know. They had the same producer, and I think they had some of the same musicians play on the record. So I got asked to go and tour with them, playing keyboards and singing, and that got me over to the States. Unfortunately, I'd only been there a few weeks when Warner Brothers decided to can the whole thing. But I had a visa for 3 months, and I had a ticket home in 3 months' time, and all the other musicians flew back home, and I said, I've waited so long to come here, I'm just not going home, so I didn't. And within a couple of weeks, less than that actually, somebody told me to go down to this club on Bleecker Street in New York, where they had a jam on a Monday night. And it's kind of funny because the members of that band are now my oldest friends in New York, but they were just beginning, and I waited until about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning for them to let me up and sing, because they didn't know who I was. And I got up and sang, and immediately there were 2 guitar players came up to me and said, "Oh, you're great. You should call this number. This person is looking for someone like you. He's looking for you, actually." And I did call that number, and it happened to be Joe Jackson, and he was looking for a keyboard player for his world tour, which became his biggest tour to date. It was the night and day tour.
Wow.
So I called him and did an audition the next day and immediately got the job. And the funny thing is, he was into jazz at that time. So for the audition, he said to me, "Do you know Cole Porter's Night and Day?" And of course, having been at jazz college, it was like, well, yeah. And I was just sat there and said, "What key do you want it in?" And we got to the bridge, and he turned around and said, "Do you want the gig?" And apparently he'd auditioned 84 other people.
Wow. Wow.
So it was amazing that I walked in and got that, and then that tour ran for a year and went all over the world. So after which I moved permanently to New York. So that was kind of my foot in the door.
Right.
Really.
And you moved on then to Peter Gabriel next, was it? Or
No.
What happened
was,
after that then?
then I kind of then I started living in New York, and then that was a whole other story. Like suddenly realizing I was in this place. I mean, it really is very different. It's very different. You know, we're separated by a common language, and we're
amazing
separated
city,
by
yeah.
a lot of things that have taken me a lot of years to understand the separation. But next, I got offered an audition for Laurie Anderson, and I did know who she was because she just had a big hit in England, which was the one that went, ha, 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 ha. Do you remember that?
No.
Maybe not, maybe. But
Sounds very
I think she
complicated.
was #1 with that, right?
Yeah, it was called Oh Superman.
Oh, Superman.
Oh,
yeah.
Superman.
And she is the now absolutely undisputed first performance artist. She was multimedia before people knew what the term was. So when I auditioned for her, got the gig, went into that, and it was probably the best thing I've ever done. I mean, Laurie is amazing. She's an amazing mind, amazing brain, amazing artist. Multimedia in 1984 when things were, you know, now it sounds very easy because everybody's doing it, but it's because of technology. But she was using tape to use projections. She was using recorded sound and then our sound. So it was three-dimensional.
Yeah.
And when that stuff didn't work, everything just went wrong. And she was also the first person to use a synclavier, or one of the first people, which is a huge sampling machine that I got to be part of, and then I had to dress up in a tutu and ballet dance and play the accordion at the same time and stuff like that. So it was fascinating working
Don't
with
know
her.
any,
So
don't
that
know
was
any
my
videos of that, do you? But
yeah. No, we made a movie actually called Home of the Brave, and you can rent that.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then?
and
then?
This is going to take hours. I can't do this because this is only
Sorry.
1984.
This is so exciting.
And then I continued working with Joe Jackson for a long time. I mean, I worked with him on and off, and we did some big tours, and sometimes I just sang and didn't tour. But we worked together for about 12 years.
All right.
On and off. And then basically I wanted to establish myself in New York. So I came off Laurie's tour very inspired. She was very inspiring. And I formed my own band, and I booked a show 6 weeks for 6 weeks ahead. I only gave myself 6 weeks at the very famous club, which is now gone, CBGB's, in the East Village. And then I started my own thing, and that was at the end of 1984 in New York. And I had a fabulous band. I mean, by the time it was 1986, it was an 11-piece band.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
With the Uptown Horns, who went on to play with the Stones. So I had some remarkable people in the band. It was New York. It was great. It was really
New York in the 80s.
It was very, very amazing in the 80s. In New York, having been a jazz freak as well, what I couldn't get over was that you could just step into all these clubs, or actually restaurants or bars, and somebody like Ron Carter, who had been Miles Davis's bass player, or Jaco Pastorius, or Gil Evans, the famous, they're just sitting there playing. I couldn't believe that. It was like a kid in a candy store.
You're at the center of the universe for that
Center
kind
of the universe for that. It's not like that anymore, but it was.
Okay, excellent. So, you getting back to Peter Gabriel, then when did you do the tour with him?
Well, that happened in '93. So
93.
I had already been in New York for a long time at that point.
So you disbanded the band before that, I take it then? And
No, I
No?
had various different bands. I was still doing my own thing, and I went. I got the chance to do a couple of things with some amazing musicians. I actually went down to Nashville and worked with this guy Rodney Crowell, who's an incredible writer down there, and from that, I think I made an album in Woodstock, and Tony Levin, the bass player, who has been Peter Gabriel's bass player since the beginning, was on bass. I mean, I think there were a lot of people on this. We played live. It was an amazing album. And he and I formed a good friendship, mainly through Scrabble. And he's a whiz Scrabble player. He would get 4 7 letters in a game. I mean, he beat me hollow every time except for one game. But I think he was incredibly impressed that I managed to beat him.
he was American.
Oh yeah, Tony Levin lives in Woodstock. He's American. He's a very
And he
tall
beat you.
chap.
At
And
Scrabble.
yeah, probably we played 25 games. He won 24, but I won 1.
That's
And
impressive.
he was very impressed that I actually beat him. And then, so when Peter was looking quite quickly for a keyboard player because he realized he didn't have anybody for this tour, Tony suggested me. And also, Michael Brecker, who was one of the most famous tenor sax players of all time, recommended me, which was so nice to have
Wow.
such incredible recommendations. So I think Peter was impressed enough by the He was looking for someone ethnic, and I believe somebody said to him, "I know a woman. Is that ethnic enough for you?"
And she's not even American.
Well, he's not either.
And there you
So,
go.
but you know, I think it was this person was trying to make a point.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Sure.
like get off that and get onto women. You know, like
Yeah.
as being, because there's still not that many out there in rock and roll. You know, so
Yeah.
he flew over to meet me and sing and play with me, and then offered me the job. And that was the very end of '92.
So you toured the world again then?
Yeah. With him.
How long did that tour last?
Well, for me, I was only on half the tour, or, well, most of the tour, and then they went around Europe again, I believe, and South America, and he had another couple of people. He replaced me with 2 people. So I did 7 months with
7
him.
months, wow.
And then I came home and got a record deal, and then he sang on my record.
Okay.
That's Tender City, the first record I did.
Which we'll ask you about later on, because we're going
Okay.
to go through all your records, aren't we? How about you sing? Would now be a good time for you to sing us a little song?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a new record coming out, and this is my throat. I don't want to make any disclaimers, but I've got a sick throat, so everything is sounding very low and scratchy. I can't get any closer to the mic, so.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this one's called My Life, and it's about a trip to Buenos Aires. Stepped outside of my life for a while, a day suspended, and I feel like a child. Walking slow, looking up, looking down, high like a sponge soaking up this town. Oh, not my own, not my home. Cars are crazy as we drive along, taxi bumping over the cobblestones. Hot down here and there's no AC, hanging out the windows over Barrio Street. So, not my own, not my home. Cause I feel we could feed the world, but we never do the right thing. Feel what we already know, be the first helping. Sun shines down and the sun shines hard, streets are uneven and life can be hard. Bed for children, dogs are stray, but real estate's booming here every day. Oh, these days. So I'm soaking up the sun with the pigeons on the roof, time slips by and I'm sipping orange juice. I won't even think about you. No time to cry over you. Oh no. In my life, my life, 'cause I feel we could feed the world, but we never do the right thing. Feel what we already know could be the first helping. Bills to be paid and house to be cleaned, money to be made constantly. Conflict of war and conflict of will. Gotta try more 'cause it's getting harder still. In my life, so I stay out late till I don't feel well, avoiding the Americans in the hotel. Write it all down as I fly on home, something to remind me when I'm on my own. My life, my life, my life, my life.
Lovely, lovely. That was Joy Askew.
Thank you.
And once again, our station manager is definitely becoming her biggest fan. Okay, let's talk a little bit about living in New York City for a moment, shall we?
Okay.
Tell us a little bit. You've obviously stayed put in New York because a lot of the great artists are there, and so on. Is it also a lifestyle thing, or?
I think it's a lifestyle thing. You know, the musical center of New York is very small, except everybody goes there, so it's easy to find it.
It's in the village somewhere.
It's all over, but it's very small. Like at the moment, they're now saying Brooklyn is the new Manhattan.
Is that right?
So there's about probably 25 new clubs just opened in Brooklyn, but it's still in the East Village as well. There's masses of clubs in the East Village. So that's the first attraction, is that you can always find it. You know, you can go out and find it. I find that I've actually wanted to go home to London for several years because I love the quality of life in London. I think it's beautiful. But the musical centre is very difficult to even know where it is. London is so huge and it seems to be scattered, and it's not an actually, literally physical thing.
Sure.
So in New York it really is. I mean, if you came over, I could say, well, we're going out and I'm going to take you here, and then the next night I'll take you there, and then you will have basically seen it all.
Oh, I'll be over then.
Right.
So
that's an attraction to begin with. When I went there in the 80s, there was so much energy and so much happening. 80s and 90s were quite remarkable musically. And there was a lot of money to be made, and because there was a lot of money to be made, it enabled you to just circulate it back into your art and culture. So it kind of, I felt that it enabled me to just explore and make music, you know, make art, have ideas, because there's always something happening and you're always joining together with something. It's a little bit harder now, but I feel that there's new influences. There's a backlash coming in that's quite refreshing and quite organic. So that's good.
Wow. How about your albums now? Shall we talk about them? You've quite a number of albums out there, haven't you?
I'm on my 8th. The one that's going to be released on August the 30th, Drunk on You, is my 8th album.
Right. So you started off with from Kyoto,
Kyoto.
like the Kyoto Agreement, from Kyoto to Hollywood. And that was in 1987, your first album.
I think so. That was an EP,
An EP.
and it was actually made on vinyl.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was nice.
This predates a lot of things then.
Yes. Well, I mean, I know it's people are making their albums on vinyl again.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, of
they
course.
have been for a while, but that was
Yeah.
necessary to make it on vinyl. That was the only way. Quite great experience going to get it mastered with Bob Ludwig, who's one of the most famous masters of all time. And you watch what's the technique, Roger? They have like a diamond,
It's a cutting lathe.
a
It's,
cutting lathe, yeah, and it actually cuts it onto a disc.
It cuts it into the vinyl. Yeah.
So that was all, that was technology that was what was being used, I guess, when the Beatles made records
Sure.
as well. So that was great. And then everything changed. 2 years after that, everyone was making CDs.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the whole process kind of changed.
Wow, so you've experienced all that. It's quite spectacular.
Well, I'm glad that I experienced that,
Yeah.
right before it ended. And then after I finished the Peter Gabriel tour, I came back and I had written 8 songs on that tour. I was quite inspired, and I came back and finished a record and got a deal from that, and that was Tender City, and that was the deal I got was with a small label that was on BMG, and they were really quite innovative and interested in singer-songwriters, which was just a beginning kind of genre that was going to explode. So that was great that they had the faith in me to release that. But unfortunately, BMG folded the label after my first album. It was such a great label. So
that was it. They packed up and went home after you.
yeah.
So after Tender City came Gorgeous Creature.
Well, those were the demos to my second album.
Okay.
And I was slated to appear on this tour that was happening called Lilith Fair, which Sarah McLachlan had put together, and it was women. It was all women, and it was such a fantastic opportunity that I couldn't. Number one, I couldn't pass it up, and number two, you couldn't go on there without a record. So I said I was just going to master the demos that I had done and have that as the record when I went out on Lilith Fair. So.
I've just had a note from the studio manager, Patrick. He would love if you'd sing some more, a little. So I suggest we'll get to that in a moment.
Okay.
I think he'll be running home with your CD tonight.
Oh, good. Okay.
The When soundtrack then, and then came The Same Desperado.
Right. When was the soundtrack? Same Desperado. So I was making all these on my own.
Fairly close to one after another, huh?
Right, because
Yeah.
I wasn't getting a deal, and I wasn't getting anywhere, and I was a little bit frustrated. And then the drum and bass craze that I think, well, I don't know whether it originated in Bristol, but I think it was key out of England, kind of hit America, and I got very interested in it because it reminded me of the electric period of Miles Davis, which really had been my biggest influence. I actually got to see Miles in 1972 when he was right in the middle of that electric. I think it was an enormous innovation. I mean, he really inspired Hendrix inspired him. It was such an amazing time. So suddenly, when I heard some of what they were doing with drum and bass, it reminded me of art. That's the extension of that.